Ladies and gentlemen, let's Red Gaming Telecom video. Let us discuss Tim Sweeney's recent comments concerning Windows 8. Now, they're actually fairly interesting because, to a degree, they actually tie in really nicely with stuff that I've been discussing regarding DirectX 12. He says, and it begins by saying, I genuinely worry about the future of Microsoft. They've locked down this Windows 8. He, by the way, refers to the Windows RT Metro apps. They say the future of app development and developers should focus there, but you can only ship that with Microsoft's permission and Microsoft approval through the Microsoft Store. That sucks compared to the open nature of the PC platform. Steam has been great in democratizing the factor on the PC, and if Microsoft forecloses on PC, then all the developers will shift to other alternatives like the Steam Box and Android. Now, he also said, in case they don't, platforms like Linux and SteamOS are very good backup. I sense a kind of renaissance at Microsoft in the last 6 months. And what he's discussing about here is talking to the DirectX team, for example. They're making some brilliant decisions on DirectX 12 to make it more efficient and more open than ever before. You just generally sense a momentum to be more open with the community and more broad with their Windows strategy. I'm really hoping that takes root. Now, Tim was actually discussing this, out of quote of course, goes without saying, but just to clarify, Tim was discussing this with Polygon in a recent interview, where he was discussing various bits and pieces, including the Oculus Rift. But I thought this was really interesting because I've touched on this a couple of times myself, primarily when it came to the recent DirectX 12 news, and indeed I'm currently writing an article concerning how this ties in with the Xbox One. Here's the thing, my personal opinion is DirectX 12 being in development and its announcement and its release, let's ignore a lot of the performance benefits for a moment. That's great, but the real fact of the matter is, to be honest with you, I don't think that Microsoft have that much of a... I just don't really think Microsoft had much of a choice in releasing it. Why? Well, here's the thing. OpenGL, we know, is going to become low level at some point. They've hinted at it several times over, and they are working on it. It's just evident. Mantle is already out there, of course, but let's face it, it's only for AMD at the moment. So, here's the thing. OpenGL is already embraced by Linux. In other words, if you want to develop a game for Linux, you've got to really go the OpenGL route. You've not really got a choice. OpenGL, Linux, and Steam with the Steam Box, SteamOS, they're all pretty much intermingled. And if you consider AAA game development, let's just be honest. If you're an indie developer, you're probably going to release it on the Linux anyway, because just as an FYI, if you actually look, a lot of gamers on the indie scene, a lot of gamers on the Linux scene, they do play a lot of indie games. That's just kind of how it is. But they don't really need, indie developers as a whole, they don't really need DX12 or low-level access or Mantle, but they'll just basically use OpenGL. I mean, most engines can output to OpenGL if you're using like Unity or whatever, with very little work in terms of coding from the perspective of the developer. They could pretty much go, for the most part, default, particularly if it's a basic looking game. I mean, you don't really need to do super high levels of optimization with something like, I don't know, Slenderman or Super Meat Boy. I'm not picking on those games, I'm not saying they're crap, I'm merely saying that graphically they're not really pushing the boat out. It's only when you're going with like AAA game development, and certainly Microsoft would likely start alienating some of the AAA studios if OpenGLs did start to offer a more robust library, and of course gamers would also start to move towards that as well. When Microsoft have stated that they do want to start pushing PC gaming again, and this actually works really well for them with DirectX 12 and Xbox One, because no matter what the performance benefits are, they're very arguable at the moment. I am discussing this in a different article which is quite in depth, but regardless of that, one can't disagree that it's pretty much paramount that there's a good cross development situation between the Xbox One and the PC, because the worst thing you can do, especially for indie development, they want to encourage indie development on the Xbox One. And as I've mentioned regarding the PlayStation 4, it's not that a robust indie library is necessarily going to sell your console. It's not going to shift the console. But what it does do is it helps pad time between releases. So, for example, if you've got, say, a AAA game in January, and you've got another AAA game in, say, February, and another one early March, and another one late March, that's good. But, particularly if it's only a single-player game, even if it's multiplayer, you can't play that game constantly for like 2-3 months at a time. So what I'm basically saying with these indie games, they give people something to do in the meanwhile, and I feel that that's been a really good strategy from the perspective of Sony with the PlayStation Plus. Anyway, this is going slightly off tangent, of course, and not really on the focus of the initial points that I was making. But here's the thing, Windows, even if Microsoft had decided to keep with DirectX 11, it wouldn't have destroyed Windows overnight. But I feel that the less open nature of the Windows platform is certainly not doing it any favours. And remember, Windows 8, Gabe Newell, who of course is, the big head honcho at Valve, he's basically said that he hates it, he feels it's abhorrent. And remember, this is one of the reasons that he actually started to push the Linux platform, because he just didn't like the closed nature regarding Windows 8. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. It's been a bit of an interesting couple of comments actually from Tim Sweeney. So I'm interested to hear your opinions on this one. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.